A fallen star, an icon frozen in time.
Perhaps her inability to live with the legend was the cause of her final tragedy.
In 1962, 36-year-old Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her LA home. But death would not curb her fame or the media's attention. The celebrity became a legend. The sudden death of Marilyn Monroe on August 5, 1962, sparked intense media coverage.
This very young woman, she was only in her 30s, at the pinnacle of her career, the pinnacle of her beauty. And suddenly, this life ends.
Her second husband, baseball star Joe DiMaggio, organized a small funeral. But outside the cemetery gate, more than 500 fans and journalists waited. Her third husband, the playwright Arthur Miller, was notably absent, seen by many as a cold-hearted act. But in a later essay, Miller labeled the event a media circus, performed by the people who had contributed to her death. Throughout her career, Monroe was surrounded by journalists and cameras, and this media obsession with her would last long after her death. Marilyn Monroe's story became a quintessential fable for the rise to Hollywood stardom.
Miss Monroe played in 23 films since her debut in 1950s. Despite flashes of temperament and tantrums, she turned in performances that kept her among the greatest box office favorites in motion picture history.
Beginning her career as a model in the mid-1940s, Norma Jeane Mortenson then took her first forays into acting, reinventing herself as Marilyn Monroe.
I just love finding new places to wear diamonds.
By the 1950s, her performances had garnered critical and fan attention.
Stay here as long as you like.
She expertly crafted the character of Marilyn Monroe, molding herself into the ideal of 50s sex appeal and glamour.
The American film star with the famous shape and the wiggly walk.
This was a young woman who was adored around the world. She was a pin-up. She'd been in Playboy. She'd taken her clothes off. She became a movie star. She could sing. She was the sweetheart of a generation and generations since.
Behind the bombshell persona was a complex and driven actor dedicated to her craft and drawn to dramatic performance. Her marriage to Arthur Miller in 1956 was seen as a sign of a new era in her work.
Not since the 7-year itch, so much Marilyn.
But due to Monroe's status as a sex symbol and Miller's image as an intellectual, the media saw the union as a mismatch. Despite her ambitions, Monroe struggled to shake off the starlet stereotype pushed by the media.
She had this dramatic front stage self. So this is the celebrity image that we all saw in her movies, in interviews, in the news. She was bubbly, outgoing, beautiful, very aware of her sort of sensuality, blowing kisses, these sorts of things. And then there was this backstage self, where actually perhaps she wasn't as happy as this bubbly front stage self, this celebrity image that was being consumed through the media portrayals of her.
Monroe was never able to escape the constant critical eye of the news. Even after a miscarriage, she put on a smile for crowds of photographers. Then, after years of battling mental illness and substance abuse, Monroe was found dead in her Brentwood home. Newspapers provided sordid detail on the circumstances of her probable suicide. Media tributes described the actor as a troubled beauty haunted by a difficult childhood and the pressures of stardom.
Good night, honey.
Death has not dimmed Hollywood's brightest star. Filmmakers, documentarians, designers, and journalists continue to revisit her story and renew her image for new generations.
She's frozen in time, forever young and beautiful. She won't get old, and as such, she's able to replicate sexiness and beauty for every generation since her death. That's why Marilyn Monroe is still incredibly famous now. Her image is going to stand the test of time.
The media made her and broke her. But the media and its appetite for the famous will also sustain the image of Marilyn Monroe forever.